Hello, and welcome to the Kemetic How-To Guide for Egyptian Pagan and Kemetic practitioners. I'm your host, Sharon. This month we're answering a viewer question about how to get started as an absolute beginner to Kemetic, aka Egyptian Paganism. First of all, if you Google Kemetic, probably about 50% of your search results are going to be for Afrocentric Kemetic pages or groups or videos. This is more of a cultural and ethnically focused movement. There are Kemetic, Afrocentric Kemetic spiritual groups, but as I understand, the way they interpret the ancient religion is different from the way that people who self-identify as pagans tend to interpret it. So, if you are looking for a pagan interpretation of the ancient Egyptian religion, then this is the place for you. So, with that caveat or distinction, in mind, the first thing that I encourage everyone to do is read. And I mean read physical print books. And especially printed books about Egyptology. And I'll explain more about that in a minute. But ebooks are great, but you actually absorb more when you read things in print. They have done studies on this. And incidentally, a really good book that talks about this is The Shallows, What the Internet is Doing to Our Brains, a New York Times bestseller by Nicholas Carr. And he explains some of the things that they've figured out go on with your attention span and your retention of material when you are reading something with hyperlinks out the wazoo versus an actual printed thing that you can curl up with, put your hands on, and read. So that is something that I really push for. And the funny thing is, they have also done studies and said that pagans are the one demographic that still reads the most out of anyone else, certainly here in America. More pagans read, and it doesn't matter about your educational level, than any other segment of society. So let's keep that up. And this book is worth checking out. But back to the Egyptology books. And by the way, you're really keeping up an ancient tradition by keeping physical books and reading them, because many of the papyrus scrolls that we've found that contain valuable pieces of work that tell us about Egyptian magic, Egyptian mythology, and all that, what they basically were collections of where somebody who was literate, who was a scribe, collected prayers and hymns, stories and remedies and things that they liked into single documents. And so on one side you had the recto and the verso of, that's the front and the back of a scroll, and so you'd have certain things on one side and certain things on the other, and in a sense that was like their ancient book of shadows or their grimoire. We found some ancient scribes' grimoire of things. They also found a headache spell, and they could tell by the wear marks on the papyrus that it had been folded and put under someone's headrest because they were dealing with headaches. So, but it was a physical printed thing. So, again, you're keeping, an ancient tradition alive by doing that. And also, when you start taking your own notes on the things that stand out to you and the things that you want to remember. That's another part of practice and, your process of learning. Now, I mentioned Egyptology books. One of the reasons why I said to go with those and not necessarily with pagan books first is because that's going to help you learn how to spot when you see it. Because there's plenty of it out there. Some of it's in print too. And those are the kind of books that I do zany book reviews on. But the web, of course, has plenty of it. And ironically, something that a professor told me over 25 years ago when I was in college still holds today. If you can find a physical paper trail or document trail behind something that's said online, then it's pretty reliable. If not, especially if you Google it and you can see the same text repeated in page after page, start asking questions because it may not be legit. But learning from what we have from Egyptology is a good way to set your barometer so that, if somebody tries to tell you something about a deity that you want to learn more about, you'll know if they're, spouting a lot of BS. Speaking of that, the second thing that you should do as a beginner is consider what or who first drew you to ancient Egypt and its religion in the first place. If it was a specific deity, then that god or goddess could be calling you to interact with them and to learn more about them. Here's an important tip. Yes, Anubis, Anapu, some sources call him Yinapu, but we stick with Anapu or Anubis. Yes, he was the god of mummification, embalming rites, and funerary rites, lord of the sacred land that was lord of the necropolis in the desert. But he was also the master of initiations. And that's why a lot of people end up coming to him first. That and the fact that he's so famous. I started working with Anubis first. You don't have to stick with Anubis. He tends to introduce people to the rest of his family. But he is often the first point of contact, if you will, with the Egyptian pantheon for a lot of pagans because that's kind of in his job description. So once you have a feel for who it was that first got your attention, then start with simple prayers. Ask them for their guidance. Ask them for help if you need it with something. And another important tip, make time to unplug. I realize there's some irony in me saying this on a YouTube video, but these videos are meant as a resource. They can never replace quiet time in the moment between you and the deities that you're seeking out. And if you can, go outside, because you can find the deities in nature. Geb is the ground that we walk on. Nut is the sky above us. Ra and Amun are in the sun. Khonsu, Jehuti, they manifest in the moon. Feel the gods if you go outside, you unplug, and you take a little time to just be in the moment and connect with the natural world around you. You can think of these first two tips as a combo. They're interconnected. Learning and then putting that into practice and developing your own intuition. Those are going to be lifelong skills that you will take with you regardless of whether or not you stick with Kemeticism. If you build those skills, with Kemeticism, even if you go on to something else, you'll be better for it. So this is a valid part of your journey, whether you stick with it or not. And as I so often tell people when they tune in for a service and say, well, I haven't connected with them in forever, and I'm, concerned if they're upset with me. The gods are patient. They've been around a lot longer than us. If it's been 6 months, a year, or a couple of years, that's a drop in the bucket to them. And they're always going to be glad to see you again. So, and it's funny, what we joke about is, somebody will tune in and they'll ask for a fortune and they end up getting 2 or 3 of them and we say, oh, you got voicemail. They were waiting to tell you some things. So, if you have to put your practice, down for a minute, if you're kind of dormant for a while, that's okay. Life happens and the gods understand. I put shrine building third on this list of things to do when you're first starting out, because really it's not going to do you much good without the first two, without learning and developing your own intuition, your own inner sense, and learning to work with the gods. And when I say work with, I mean just being able to hear them and communicate with them, even if it's just simple prayers, and you might get kind of a sense, it's not even in words, but just a what way to go. Those are more important, and those are going to be essential if you try to go to the next step and make a shrine, or then start doing any kind of a ritual. When it comes to shrines, I talk about the aesthetics of that in my first book, Following the Sun. And the funny thing is, I had an art professor who was well known for, among other things, he was a really eclectic soul. He had been in college in the 60s, and you could kind of tell. But he assigned everybody in one of his particular classes to build a shrine to something, anything. And so you had people making, shrines to, abstract concepts like, summertime or whatever. I built a shrine to Darth Vader. And I even dressed the part and did sort of an impromptu invocation to the Sith Lord. And this was before any of the prequel movies had come out. So, and he took slides of it, and it came out really great. But that ended up informing, the shrine building that I would do later in life. So did my Japanese Buddhist neighbor. We came to call her Mama-chan. She was Nichiren Buddhist, and I learned a lot of things from her about etiquette and, certain ways of doing things. And all of that together, informed how I, put together a shrine. And of course the Nichiren Buddhist mandala that, was part of my Buddhist practice is what you see in my altar setup, that I have now. So, of course, I've done videos on putting a shrine together. Stick around to the end and I'll put some links to those. And of course I talk about that in Following the Sun. Rituals are fourth on this list because those can kind of emerge organically. If you set up a little shrine and you just have a habit of, offering a piece of chocolate and saying a short prayer, maybe lighting a stick of incense or something, guess what? That becomes your personal ritual. You can think of formatted rituals as basically the flavor of a particular group or tradition. And my most basic ritual, the one that I started out with, 17 years ago now? It's been a minute. That one is in Following the Sun. And then there's a more detailed one that's in Circle of the Sun. And then, of course, there's the version that we do on live stream. Celebrating the Egyptian gods, has something very similar to that. But if you want a printed booklet of the ritual that we do on live stream, that's also in the description. That's on my website, and anytime we do a live stream, that is also linked in there. And this is the booklet. And I made sure to keep this down to $10 US, so that, if you're short on cash, you can at least get something that, you can follow along with what we do here on YouTube. And it has a glossary of, important concepts and things so that, you won't be scratching your head going, oh, what are we talking about? No, what are the manjet and sectet bars? It's in here. So to recap, whether you are a total beginner or a seasoned pagan, you want to, one, read and learn as much as you can. 2, learn to listen to your intuition. Pray. Develop your own way of connecting with the divine. 3, make a shrine space as you can. And, it doesn't have to be elaborate, just with what means you have, available to you. And 4, develop rituals as you can, or, use one of the resources that we have, and, again, follow the links, but do what feels comfortable for you. Remember, your spiritual journey is something that you have your whole lifetime to devote to. So don't rush it and enjoy the journey. And by the way, the folks on my Discord have been kind enough to put together a rather nice list of recommended reading materials. I'm going to put a couple of things out there, and these are, one of them is a very new publication. Of course, you have my books. Those are written for a pagan perspective, but some Egyptology books that I have used as sources. This one is fairly recent. It's Religion and Ritual in Ancient Egypt by Emily Teeter. And this is written for, the layperson. It's not full of a lot of complicated jargon like some books that started out as dissertations tend to be. This was written for the average person, and it explains rituals and holidays and certain things that were done in ancient Egypt in a way that is a lot more sympathetic, and not some of that, those, poor primitive people, like in the past would have been done. So, Religion and Ritual in Ancient Egypt, and Egyptian Mythology, A Guide to the Gods, Goddesses, and Traditions of Ancient Egypt by Geraldine Pinch. And the nice thing about this is it has an alphabetical listing of deities, themes, and concepts, and it also covers some major myths. So those are 2 really good resources. Another one that is just beautiful to look at, and is the best, most recent translation of the Book of the Dead. This big book here, the reason why this one, and it is the Egyptian Book of the Dead, the Book of Going Forth by Day, the Complete Papyrus of Ani, and it starts with Raymond O. Faulkner's translation, but builds upon that and includes more recent research. And so you'll have, a lot of folks listed, in the author line here, Ogden Gullett Jr., Carol A. R. Andrews, J. Daniel Gunther, James Wasserman, and of course, Dr. Raymond O. Faulkner. But what's nice about this is you have some gatefold pages in here. I'll try and get to one. Here we are. So they tried to do this so that you could get the whole text underneath the images from Papyrus of Ani, and it's really a wonderful book. And I actually happened to buy it at a metaphysical shop, so but it's a legit book. So and it's very recent, so it's worth adding to your collection. And it's time once again for a super happy dance. For all our super stickers, from all our super peeps. Thank you so much. What you do supports this channel. Remember, this channel has no corporate sponsors, no AI content. We are just cool. So be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Check the video description for links to the books that I mentioned, the website for Kemetic Reform, for our sister channel, Golden Age Video. We will be back next month with a Deity Smackdown. It's going to be a lot of fun. You won't want to miss it. So, for the Kemetic How-To Guide, this is Sharon, wishing you Sanepti.
Enjoyed this video? Then be sure to hit like and subscribe to the Kemetic Independent channel. You can also buy my books on Lulu.com And special thanks to all my Patreon supporters. Join us for updates, outtakes, and exclusive videos only on Patreon. Check the description for links.
Cannot believe what I'm seeing!